Welcome to the Painted Toad. This is Let's Go Camping. Hey there, it's Rose from the Painted Toad, and I'm going to show you how to paint Let's Go Camping. This was part of my Paint With Me series. I usually run these live on my Facebook page at the Painted Toad on Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m., but I wasn't able to be there live for this particular class, so this is the free tutorial. So make sure you like and subscribe to my YouTube page because I'm always uploading new video tutorials for you to learn how to paint or just take a creative break. Take some time to enjoy creating, painting, doing a little bit of me time, or maybe even spending time with your kids and enjoying an activity like painting with them. All right, let's get started. I'm going to switch my camera over here. I've got my canvas already. I'm using a 5x7 canvas. You can always use a larger canvas if you want to. I like to do these little 5x7s for samplers. So if it turns out really cool and you really like it, then get a bigger canvas and you can always paint it on that too. For this one, we're going to jump right in there and we are going to paint the background. So I'm going to use some light blue here. If you don't have light blue, you can always use a little bit of blue and white. I'll probably use blue and white as well. I'm going to get some white on my... This white never wants to come out. Urgh. I'm afraid to sort upside down because then it'll pool in the, let me see here. I think this is a nice blue. This is a cerulean or cerulean blue. But like I said, any shade of blue is fine. You can do light blue or dark blue. I'm going to get the skyline in first with a flat brush. Oop, this one is still a little bit wet. Let me dry that off. Had some orange paint in it, so I don't want that in my sky because orange and blue do not make a pretty color. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to take some blue, bring it up in the top here, and I'm also going to get white right on my brush there. Just doing sweeping motions back and forth. You want plenty of paint on here so that it blends well. Sometimes if you don't get enough paint on there, it doesn't want to blend, and then that gets a little frustrating. We're going to bring this right on down. Kind of smoothing it, bringing it down. If you have thicker edges to your painting, you can go ahead and paint the edges too. I'm going to add some more white at the bottom so that it's a little bit lighter. And in here, we're going to have some mountains. We're going to have like a river, or even it could be a lake. You can decide what you want it to be. It could be anything. River, lake, pond. I think mine is going to be a river. So I'm just bringing that straight down there. Now, in this area here, I am going to have that river come in, and so I'm going to go back to more of the blue and bring that in a little bit deeper. And it's okay if it blends up here a little bit with your sky because we're going to be adding other things here. We're going to have some, oh, what are we going to have in there? We're going to have some mountains or hills in the background there. So these two actually aren't going to be right next to each other. We're going to have some other interesting things in the background. Okay, I think that's looking pretty cool. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it like that. And then I'm going to lay down some color here for the camping site. So the campsite is overlooking this river. That's what we're going for. Let's kind of clean that out. Dry this off. Okay, so for the campsite, I think I'm just going to use, I'm just going to use some green here. Maybe I've got this Naples yellow. I like to use this a lot to tone colors down. So if I don't want to go with a super, super bright yellow, because then it looks really springy, I want it to look a little more like this is maybe the summertime. So maybe some of the the grass is maybe gotten a little dried out. We can add more to it. I'm gonna add some ground in there. So I am adding that Naples yellow, and then I have this dark green. So Naples yellow and dark green. And I'm just gonna put both of these on my brush here and just kind of see what shade I can get, and just paint that along here. So it's kind of got a little bit of green in there, a little bit of yellow. And I'm not too worried right now. We'll go back and add more texture to this later. And there'll be trees and all sorts of things in that too. But for right now, we're just gonna blend it on the top here. Let's kind of bring that over here. And I like to take my brush and sweep it all the way back. Sometimes if you stop mid-stroke, then you get like this little brush stroke where you can see the end of your brush on your painting, and you don't want that. So make sure you're not, take it all the way across the painting here so you don't end up with any of those weird spots. Now I do also want to make a campsite here, so I'm going to keep, I'm not going to clean my brush here, but I am going to come back in and get some of this dark brown. It's raw umber. And I am going to squeeze a little bit of that. I don't need very much. And I'm going to do the campsite part. So with the campsite, just keep in mind that, you know, like, I don't know if you've ever gone camping before, but it's usually kind of, you know, the dirt is kind of worn out there. So I'm just going to sweep a little bit of a dirty area here where our dirt comes in, where the grass has all been worn away because people have camped there before. This is kind of dark. I'm not too happy with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sweep this off just a little bit. And then I'm going to come back in with the yellow and just kind of lighten it up so it's not so dark. I think that looks pretty good. And then just so we don't get like this really distinct edge here, we can just kind of take our brush and kind of brush it back and forth on the edge. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. I'm just taking the edge of the brush and just kind of sweeping it back and forth. Some of this brown is mixing with the green. I'm putting it in the yellow and the green. It's still got some brown on there. I don't really need to add any more brown. But I just want these areas to blend so it kind of looks a little bit more natural. Like these areas have kind of worn down, and here's the dirty area, and then we've got more grass over there. So I don't know if you can see the difference there, but here is my little campsite. Maybe I'll throw a little bit more green in here, a couple patches here and there. So that kind of gets more of a natural blend to it. All right, while this is, well, it's still a little bit wet, but because I'm going to work with some darker colors, I'm not too worried about this mixing. So I'm going to take some of this Naples yellow, so it's kind of like a sandy colored yellow, and I'm going to add in along the edge here. And see, I still have the brown and the green in there, and that's fine. We're adding in the river bank, the edge of the river bank here. And some of it can be more yellow, some of it can be more green or brown. Whatever comes off your brush is fine. Ooh, I should have just left that. Sometimes I go overboard and then it doesn't blend the way I want it to. All right. So I kind of like how this yellow's along the edge because it looks a little sandy there over on the other side. Now I'm going to go a bit heavier into the green, and I'm going to build some mountain shapes. I am going to take, let me just wipe this brush up. I don't really need to wash it. If you want to wash your brush, you can. But I'm just going to go heavier with the green. I don't always wash my brush because sometimes when you pull those other colors from your painting into the next color, it's more of a natural blend. So some of these, some of these browns kind of blend up into the green, that's totally fine. It actually looks better that way, in my opinion. Maybe somebody else would argue with that. I'm going to bring this in here. This is going to be a really cool one. So I love going to these remote places. I don't camp much anymore. My husband and I used to backpack all the time. But I don't know, I got older. It's hard to backpack when you get older. Like I think I've mentioned this before in some of my other paintings. I need a bed to rest in, to sleep in. So my husband swears by doing the hammocks, sleeping in a hammock. So I'm gonna actually have to try that. I can't knock it till I try it. All right, so here's my first little landform. And then I want to have some more hills in the background here. So we're going to do something called atmospheric. Actually, I probably should have done those background ones first. So sorry about that. Sometimes as I'm painting, I'm talking too much and then I'm not really thinking about the process to make it easier for you. So if this doesn't work out, that's all right. You can always go back and try again, paint over it. So what I'm going to do, I'm taking some of this darker green I took a little bit of white, and I'm lightening it up. Because in the background, sometimes you get atmosphere that makes it a little bit hazy. So I want this mountain behind the one I've just painted. I'm not going to worry too much. I'm going to just let that go over, and I'll probably redo that line. And I want these ones in the background just to be a little bit hazier. Like there's fog or mist or atmosphere back there, so we don't see it as well because it's kind of off in the background. In fact, I'm going to actually see, I'm going to clean out my brush a little bit and just see if I add some more white over the top of this. I really want to get that atmosphere-y look over this. So I'm experimenting here. I'm taking just some white on the edge of my brush, kind of blending it over the top of that. So it looks like maybe there's some thin clouds. I'm going to try some blue on the top of this as well. So it kind of blends. We'll see if this works. This is all experimenting, looking at the colors I have and experimenting. With some blue and some white. So we've got kind of this misty look over here. And I may go in and add a little bit more mist. And then I'm not too worried about the edge of this front one because we're going to add some little trees on there. So I might clean the edge up just a little bit with some of the dark green. But I'm going to add some trees on here and texture so it's not critical that that edge got blended in a little bit. So I think that looks pretty cool. This one is kind of hazy and in the background. And then this one up front is a little bit more visible. I'm going to make it taller though. Otherwise it's not really matching the height of my background here. Though the other one in the background could be a little taller. But there we go. Okay, so far so good. We've got our water down here. We've got the sky. I'm going to switch brushes here. Let that one soak. And I think I'm going to come in with a round brush just to add in maybe some clouds. Let's see if I can find my round brush that I want to use. Let me see here. I just want to use a small one. I don't want too big of a brush. I feel like this one is too big. You know what? All right, I'm going to use a little filbert brush, but a round brush would work fine for this. It's just, I can't seem to find the size that I want. And I'm taking some white. I've got a little blue on it too. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm going to just come in here and maybe add some clouds. And I'm just kind of filling this in first. Oops, there's like a little hair or something stuck in my painting. I don't know what that is. Okay, I'll just paint right over it. So this is like perfect camping weather. It's clear, it's sunny, it's warm, not too hot, no rain in the forecast. That's the other thing if you go camping or backpacking. Weather can play a big part in how enjoyable the experience is. So whenever you're doing clouds and things like this, you need to I just kind of do little blobs and shapes here. You don't really want to paint like distinct edges on your clouds because then they're just going to look like a kindergartner drew them. So if you notice with my clouds, I'm not being very um, exacting on the edge. I'm just kind of doing these little dabs and things. And that just makes it look more realistic. 'Cause remember, clouds are, they're made out of water. It's a water vapor. So the water vapor is going to ebb and flow and not have distinct edges because it's water vapor is floating around up there. So if you give it clouds really distinct edges, they're just not going to look as realistic as if you just give them little uneven kind of fluffy little edges. I added some blue in this one. Get some blue in there. Get some shadows. Hopefully you can see that okay. And the other thing that I'm doing is notice there's a couple areas that are a little bit whiter than others. So I just do that in a couple little spots. And that's, you know, the part of the cloud that might be picking up some of the sunlight. So you're getting brighter areas because the sun is reflecting, just like sun reflects in water. It also reflects on the clouds and creates different light and shadow. And I highly recommend, you know, if you're going to do lots of different landscapes or if you want to get really good at these types of paintings, it's a good idea to observe, you know, look at the clouds, go out and look at them, find pictures of cloud formations and, you know, get a feel for it. Look at where the light and the shadows are showing and all of that. Okay, I'm gonna bring this a little bit more white on this upper cloud. And then if you want, I could do, I think that looks pretty cool. I might do one more little small one down here on the horizon line, or near the horizon line, we should say. Just another small, kind of softly blended there. Okay, so there's our cloud. And then while I'm working on this, we could add a little bit in the water as well. Now you could do a reflection of your clouds in the water if it was really still. I'm making mine more of a river, so I think I'm just gonna kind of do some texture down in here to maybe make it look like this river has some flow. This would work really good with the edge of a flat brush. In fact, I should probably switch brushes, but since this one was already dirty, I'm going to keep using this one. I'm adding a little bit of that blue, that light blue in there, and just kind of, oops, that's a bit more than what I wanted. No worries, I'll just spread it out, and I can always go over this with blue again. So if you're doing this and you feel like, oh, it's too white, too bright, it's not looking right, we'll then go back in with some blue and blend it in right while it's still wet, because all of that will blend back in. There we go. Tone that because I don't want like these big white patches in there. This is a calm river. Now, if you wanted a river rapids, well, then that would be different. You could put some other things in there. I just want some glistening water here. Maybe I'll do a little bit more white around the shore where it's more shallow. And then a little bit more blue just to blend it in. Okay, I think that looks pretty cool. I'm definitely happy with it. What I want to do now, let me see how dry this is. It's very humid today, so it might take this a little bit to dry. You know, since it's still drying, I'm going to go in and create some of the pine trees. So I'm going to use a liner brush, which is just a really skinny brush like this. And I'm going to create some pine trees. I think I'll just use my dark umber brown, so the dark brown burnt umber, or you could use raw umber. They're pretty much both very similar. And I'm going to have one of my pine trees kind of really long, so I'm just going to take this straight down. With a dark color, I can go right over the other paints. It'll block it out. So you can't really do that with light colors, but with dark colors it works just fine. So if the paint's wet, it's not going to make a big difference. And I'm going to have this come right off of the page. And then for branches, we're going to keep this really simple. So I'm just going to kind of do just some little branches coming this way and this way. And we're going to fill all this in with the pine needles and all that. But for right now, this will give me a guide about where I want my pine needles to go. As we get to the bottom, the branches widen out here, getting wider and wider. Okay, and then you know what else I'm going to do? I just realized I'm going to add some texture to this because I said I wanted little trees there. So I'm going to add some texture to it just because if I start painting all this in on top, it's going to be hard to do that behind stuff. So always do the behind stuff first. So I'm going to take, I have my dark green and I'm just going to take a little bit of that brown. So I'm going to get like kind of a dark greeny brown color. And I'm going to create some textures here to make it look like there's some pine trees along the edge here. And I'm not being super duper like, I'm not doing individual trees. I'm just kind of blobbing these in along the edge. Yeah, you don't want to think like you got to paint individual trees. This is too far away. You might see little peaks and things like that on the trees, little treetops, so it might be kind of triangular, but you don't need to do like perfectly shaped little pine trees back here. This is just all to give the impression that in the distance on this hill back here, there are little pine trees growing. Whoops. I got one down into my water. I'm not too worried about it. We'll do something with that. Either I'll paint over it when it's dry, or we'll have something, oh, I could turn into a reflection, or we'll figure it out. No worries. Don't let little things like that stress you out. Painting is supposed to be relaxing and enjoyable. If it's stressing you out, then you're not doing it the right way. Okay, so I've got those, and then I'm going to add a little more texture, and then I'm going to come back and work some more on these tree trunks. So for these parts, on this part of the hill, I'm actually going to make them a little bit brighter because the sun is shining down in this, so it would actually give it a hint of brighter green. So I am going to I'm taking that yellow I was using before, the Naples yellow, and I mixed it with a dark green to lighten it up a tad. And so up here, let me see, does that look, I think I need more Naples yellow. Let's get some more yellow on there and just kind of dab that back there. Now alternately, if you don't want all this texture on the back, you don't have to do that texture. If you like the smooth look, then just keep your hills nice and smooth. They don't have to be textured like this. I just am a lover of texture, so I do a lot of different textures in my paintings. Kind of getting this lighter color, and then I'll probably go back in one more time and add the darker color just to get some shadows, light and shadows. But like I said, if you liked it with a smooth look, just leave it smooth. It does not have to have all that texture. It can look just as good without it. Come from the top a little bit there. I think that looks pretty cool. We got some stuff going on in the background there. Okay. Let's see, is that still wet? Let me see. I'm just gonna smudge it a little, smooth it out, and then I'll go back and fix that later. I'm not too worried about it. I'm gonna go back in now and add, I'm gonna do some more pine trees. Maybe we're gonna have one right on the edge here, kind of growing. Kind of paint that all the way down. I'm not too worried about it being perfectly thick. It should be a little pointier at the top, but hold on. I got too much gunk on my brush. Let me just make that a little bit more. There we go. Okay. And then with our branches coming down. Now this one, I could do a different pine tree. I wonder if I should do a different one. Maybe one that's where the branches kind of come up instead of down. Alternately, you could do different trees if you wanted to. I'm not too concerned about the thickness of these branches either because I'm going to be covering them up with pine needles, so no worries about that. Don't worry if they're all, if some are skinny and some are fat. That's not going to be a big deal once we put the pine needles on there. They're not even going to show. In fact, that little area there that I'm worried about, I'll just cover that up with pine needles. So I don't even have to worry about that little mistake I have down there. I'll just fill it in. Okay, so this one's a little bit different shape pine tree, so I've got one there. Let's see, do I want to do anything else over here? I want to have room, so the tent is going to go here. I might add another tree, we'll see. We'll see. I am going to map out though where I want my tent. And so I am going to mask the tent in, and masking is when we paint over with white paint so that the next color we put on doesn't have a bunch of stuff through the background here. So, but I do want to, so we're going to have this little tent here. I'm just using the edge of my flat brush, kind of get the shape of the tent. I'm going to do a dome tent. You could do a, triangular shaped tent if you wanted. Now the one in the picture has some of the windows open and stuff so you can actually see behind here. So I might attempt to do that just to kind of make it look interesting. But we'll see. We'll see. We don't want this to be too challenging. I want you to enjoy the painting and not get stressed out about these finer details. This is not going to be a white tent. I'm going to do a different color. In the picture, it's kind of a bright orange, but honestly, you could do any color tent that you want. With all of this, greens and blues, I would recommend doing a tent color that's maybe a warmer color, like a bright red or pink or orange or yellow, just so that it stands out a bit and it's not lost in the background. We want it to stand out a tad. Notice I'm just painting the shape in. So we've got the arcs here. I think I may do a tracer for this one. So if I did, you can cut out and trace it first. And if I didn't do a tracer, well, then just kind of do what I'm doing. Create these arcs, create your little opening here. And I'm going to fill that in with white. So maybe we'll see a little bit of the blue water through the back window of the tent. I'm going to leave that part blue, and then we'll come back in and add shades and shadows and things like that. So there's our tent. At least the outline of our tent. You could also add, I think it might be fun to add a little fire pit or something like that over here. So maybe I will do that while my tent is drying. I'm just going to use one of my brushes that's already dirty. And I'll add a little fire pit. So I'm just going to use some dark brown, maybe some white, kind of create some ashes over here. I'm just dabbing that in there. Hopefully you can see, let me see if I can zoom in a little bit so you can see a little better and see how I'm actually creating that fire pit. There we go. Now you can see the fire pit better. It's just a little detail, and this is completely optional. If you don't want a little fire pit, then don't do a little fire pit. And then we need some stones around it. So I'm going to just take my white with some of this dirty brown. Just kind of add some stones. You could also use black if you want. There. I think that looks good. I might do a touch of my grass, just kind of coming up in front of these just a tad. And then you can also take, I'm just taking the edge of this brush I have, just kind of creating some little shrubbies. And I'm going to do a little bit more of that in a couple other places along here, just to give it some texture. And I'm not doing individual blades of grass, I'm just kind of creating some little dabs here and there, giving it a grassy texture. I really don't have a lot of paint on my brush either. We call this dry brushing when you don't have a lot of paint on there, because I don't want it to be super bold. This is just kind of background, just a little bit of texture here and there to make it look like there's grass growing, but we don't need it standing out super dark. Add some patches down here. Hope you can see, yeah, I think you can see that on the video. I'll just add in texture in, put a little bit there. Okay, I think I'm liking that. I'm going to back that up a tad, pull this back centered again. Okay, so you can see it's coming together. Let me see, is this white dry? It's pretty dry. You know what, while that's drying, I'm going to work on this tree over here. So I'm going to fill this tree in, this pine tree, and I'm using the dark green again. And you can use the dark green and brown. I'm still using this little filbert brush. You could go in and use a flat brush on this, or a round brush. Any of these brushes would work. You know what, let me show you how to do it with a flat brush, because I think that might be easiest for creating these tree shapes here. Let's see, where is my flat brush? All right, here's the small one I want to use. Okay, so when you're creating pine trees, you're not painting individual needles. We're looking at the shape of the tree. So you kind of look at the branch as a grouping. So how is it shaped? And what I do is I just kind of dab along here. I'm using the edge of my flat brush, and I kind of get the shape of the pine tree that way. You can add a little bit of the dark brown in there if you want a little bit more dimension, color. I think I'm going to have to get some more green because I'm almost out here. But let me try to angle my brush so it's staying in focus for you. We just kind of build to the sides. We're angling the brush so that the branches are, or the pine needles are kind of spreading. Don't be afraid to go over your trunk too. Oh, look, see, I don't have to worry about that little area I messed up. See, just blended it right in. There we go. That's why I said don't worry about it, because we can always modify and make it different. Now, in order to get this, see how it's kind of blending with the background there, which is fine. If you really want that to stand out a little bit more, I would use a touch more brown, just to darken up the green and almost make it look a bit more like a silhouette. But, you know, you don't have to. I mean, it looks okay how it is too. So I'm gonna just, I need to add green anyways because I ran out of paint. And I'm gonna go back in here. And I'm kind of dipping my brush in the green and the brown so I can get more of a, and then on the edges here, look how I turn my brush there, see? So you can give it like little fronds sticking up on the edge and then kind of go a little bit more sideways, working your way down. Just make that a little bigger so I can see what it's doing. Okay. I'm just hoping this camera isn't like unfocusing as I'm trying to do this. Sometimes it focuses on my hand and you need to really see what I'm doing with the brush. You don't need to see my hand. It's the only tricky thing about these videos is getting it so that you can see what I'm doing. I already know how to do what I'm doing, but I'm trying to show you. There we go. See? Keeps going out of focus. Sorry about that. I'm trying. Maybe if I come from the top. Let me try to come from the top for this last little part. This is just a weird angle for me to paint at, so. You can use any angle you want to paint. That's easy for you. But this is a little bit kind of a strange angle for me. There we go. Hopefully, yeah, that's a little better. At least it's staying focused on the tree. I have a little gap here. Actually, though, I like it because sometimes, here, I'm gonna put one more little branch in there. Sometimes you get a little gap, a little bald spot in your tree. So there's one pine tree. My tent is dry, so I'm going to paint that first because the second pine tree is kind of in front. And so some of those pine needles might come over in front of our tent. So we're going to paint that first, and then we'll do more of the last pine tree here. So tent color, like I said, any color you want. You can do kind of a bright color if you want to. That's what I'm going to do, just so it stands out from our background. An orange would be a really good choice because you'd have nice contrast against the blue. Got some orange, I've got some yellow. Okay, I'm getting yellow and orange on my brush. And first thing, I'm going to just paint in all of these little areas here. We'll get kind of a nice bright orange tint. Painting right over the white. And see how the masking works nicely. Now, if we didn't do the masking, that blue in the water would show through under this orange, which to me is really annoying when that happens. Some people doesn't bother them, but it bothers me, because then it changes the color and the look of the tent itself. So I kind of don't like when I can see through. So that's why I do masking a lot when I'm, painting a lighter color over a darker color. And I'm going to add some more yellow in on this side. And for right now, just getting the color down is important, and then we'll go back in with a small liner brush to add some details and make it look like a tent. Like here's the bottom of the tent. Maybe the inside bottom is a bit more yellow. We'll lighten that up so we just get some differences. And then I smooth this out, otherwise if you leave the paint on real thick, it'll never dry. Well, it will dry eventually, but not for what I want to do. I want to move along here. I don't want to wait forever for it to dry. So I'm just going to smooth those out. There we go. And then I'm going to use black and a liner brush, and I'm going to go in and add some details on this. So I'll get some black paint. Don't need very much, just a little bit. Get my liner brush again. I'm going to clean it out. It had some green and brown still in it. Make sure it's nice and dry, otherwise you get drips coming down your handles. And I'm going to go right over, even though this is still wet, because it's black that I'm outlining with, the black just goes right over. So I don't have to worry too much about it not covering. If this is intimidating to you, if taking a liner brush like this and outlining is too intimidating, you could alternately do this with a black Sharpie or a paint pen. So that's always something to keep in mind. If you do the black Sharpie or the paint pen, you should wait until the paint is dry. That's the one advantage of painting with the brush. This is a little bit wet. Let me dab that. Is you can just go right over it when you're doing the outlining. But with the other ones, you don't want to get that wet paint from your, from this tent onto your paint pen or your Sharpie, because then it'll stop working very well. You don't have to do every single line either. You can keep it, you can just kind of give the impression of a line. So it looks like you got different things going on in there. Okay, so this has some stakes coming out, so I'm gonna kind of do, this is so wet. Is it the paint that's wet? I guess it's the paint that's wet. I feel like this brush keeps getting wet on me, like it's leaking. I'm gonna bring this up here. And that's gonna come there. I'm doing those little, the cross beams that they do to, you know, that you put on the pop-up tent to get it to actually stand up. And then there might be another one. Let me see here. This one kind of comes here. I don't know if I would trust this tent to stay up the way I'm painting it. Alright, I'm going to add the little things here. It attaches to the tent. And we got a couple over here. Like, don't worry too much about getting this perfect. We're not looking, we just want it to look tent-like. So if you're stressing about trying to get this all perfect and everything, don't worry about it. It's more fun to just kind of paint it, give the impression that this is a tent. All right, what do you think? Is it looking like a tent? Maybe there'll be a little window on that side. All right, I think it looks like a tent. I think we're good. Maybe you disagree. If you do, then do your tent the way you want it, but I think it looks cute. I think it looks like a little tent here. I'm gonna take some of this orange and kind of paint here so it looks like these little things are attached to my tent. And then I'm also going to darken this part up right here. Now, I'm doing this, just be careful if you do it this way because the black is still wet. It might mix in there a little. But then if you do get a little black in there, well, then that part will be just a little bit shadowed. It'll be a little darker. So if you want to wait before adding in these extra parts, you can always do that. There. I think that looks kind of cool. So I just kind of let that black blend in there and give it a little bit of a shadow here. Let's add in some yellow. different variations of color. It'll make it look kind of interesting that way. Light and shadow, but a little more yellow in the front here to make it brighter. Like I said, be real careful if you don't want to drag that black in there. Just kind of working around the edges here. And then back here, I've got the darker orange, and I could drag some of the black into that just because that side might be a little more shadowed. So pull a little bit of black in there. And honestly, you don't need a lot because then the black will just take over. So, there. Gives it a little bit more dark on that side. And then I made that a window, so with a window you could do, you could take a little white on top of there and just kind of go across, make a bit of a screen here. Same for this. I want to make that look like it's a window. Let me rinse this because I got some black in it. I'm going to take some white and just very carefully just kind of make a little bit of a screen here. I am going to put some white on this, and I am going to, I'm wiping most of it off, and then I'm just going to dry brush a little bit of this. Maybe it's got some coals that are still steaming there. Heading up into the sky. There. And the last thing we need to finish is over here. We're going to do this final tree. So get your flat brush out again. And we'll take and do the tree. Same method we used before. I'm just going to do the dark brown and the green. And I'm just going to kind of blob. You see that okay? Yep. And bring this along here. I'm using a bit more brown just because I want it to show up a little better over my background. Doesn't matter so much where the blue is because that shows up, but when you get down here, we're just dressing the tree here. Putting on its little piney outfit. See, some of those branches are going to come in front of this. That's why I wanted to paint the tent first, because I knew some of those are going to cross over. So that way it looks like the tent is behind the tree, and we don't have to try to paint tent around pine tree branches, which is really tricky. Anytime you do these landscapes, you gotta think of layers, like what's gonna be in front of something else. Okay. Well, I'm thinking it looks pretty good. I'm gonna do a little bit of outlining on that um, campfire here, maybe because I have some black now, so make sure this is dry so it doesn't drip, because I've already complained about that. Okay, we'll add some more darker ash in here. Maybe there's little sticks, little broken logs. And I am also going to add a tad of a shadow under my tent, where my tent is pitched. And I'm just going to put some brown under here. And of course it's being annoying. My brush is being annoying. Come on, brush. Paint, brush, paint. There we go. Just gotta bring that down. Darken that up just a tad so we've got a bit of a shadow where the tent is. Okay, I think it's finished. So get a good look. What do you think? What color did you decide on your tent? I'm interested to know. All right, so this is Rose from the Painted Toad, and this is our little Let's Go Camping painting. And I hope that you enjoyed learning this painting, and I hope that you have a wonderful summer full of all sorts of fun family activities like camping and everything else you love to do this time of year. Remember to be creative, be artistic, and get connected at the Painted Toad. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, find us on Facebook at the Painted Toad, Instagram, I already said YouTube, TikTok, and then of course our website, www.paintedtoad.com. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you're learning and I hope you're loving doing these paintings. Have a great rest of your day.